Good morning. So I'm going to annotate the opening passage from Act 2, Scene 2. This is Romeo in the garden looking up and finding Juliet looking out her balcony. So it's his first sight of her. It's at the very beginning of the very beginning of the scene. So I'm going to show you some of the things that I think are worth marking in the text and what sorts of things I would underline and the notes I would make. So he sees her and he says, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon." So already I'm going to note here that he's creating a metaphor when he notices that, or when he observes that Juliet is the sun. Now, mind you, it's dark out. It's after midnight, so everything is dark. And Juliet as the sun, it's a metaphor for how she brightens everything. We could also say the sun is the giver of life. Everything depends upon the sun. All living things to grow. And basically you can't live without the sun. So we see just in this one metaphor how Romeo imagines that he can't live without Juliet already. So arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who's already sick and pale with grief, that thou, her maid, art more fair than she. So who might this moon be that's contrasted to the sun? The moon who is sick and pale with grief that Juliet is more fair. Well, the only other woman we know that Romeo was interested in was Rosaline. And if this is basically him imagining that she's jealous, who's already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, art more fair than she. So he imagines, and we have no reason to believe that this is actually true, but he imagines she's jealous of Juliet. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. Okay, so this is all about Rosaline, this section here. And basically his way of saying, I'm over her. Juliet's better than her. She must be jealous of Juliet. Okay, so then he sees Juliet at the window again. Well, I should clarify, because what he saw was the light in her window. Now he's actually seeing her. He was assuming that the light through what light through yonder window breaks. He was assuming that light was the light of her window. So now he knows it's her, and he says, "Ah, it's my lady, it's my love. Oh, that she knew she were. She speaks it, she says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses, I will answer it. I am too bold. Is not to me she speaks." Okay, so all that's happening here is he sees her talking, not to him, because he's like a stalker hidden there. He doesn't know that she doesn't know he's there. He sees her talking, and he basically wants to yell out to her to tell her that he loves her, but he decides to play it cool for a little while. As in, sit in her bushes and listen to her. I'm too bold, 'tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars, as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would, through the airy region, stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. Okay, let's go back. Okay, two of the fairest stars in all of heaven, having some business, do entreat her eyes to twinkle in their spheres till they return. What if her eyes were there, they in her head? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars. Basically, we're continuing this idea of Juliet as bright. We saw that in the very beginning, that metaphor of Juliet as the sun. So now this notion that Juliet is bright, it's being repeated as a symbol. So we have a motif that's introduced, a repeated symbol of Juliet as being something bright. In this case, the brightness of her cheek would shame those stars. So what he's saying here is Juliet is brighter than the stars. So what else about this motif is notable? The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars, as daylight doth a lamp. Her eyes in heaven would, through the airy region, stream so bright that birds would sing and think it were not night. So again, Juliet, in his mind, has the power to turn night into day. And then finally, see how she leans her hand. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. So the last thing he says to himself, after kind of marveling at her beauty and her brilliance, her brightness, is, oh, that I were a glove upon that hand. And that's the hand that's touching her cheek. He wants to touch her. So the physical desire is never far from the relationship. He wants physical contact. We saw that in the shared sonnet, how quick he was to grab her hand, to kiss her, and here too we see, that he wants a physical relationship with her. So a number of things come out of this. Namely this metaphor of Juliet as being the sun, or which introduces a motif of light and brilliance that's associated with Juliet. Darkness in this case is associated with Rosaline. Rosaline is the moon. We see how quickly he's gotten over Rosaline. He imagines Rosaline to be jealous of Juliet, all kind of made up in his head. He's exercising a little bit of restraint here because he doesn't go out and yell to her right away. But remember, he is in her garden spying on her and sort of stalking her.